So you'd like to learn some slick jazz techniques. Well, there's many ways to go about learning things that make you sound jazzy. Most of all, you're going to want to look as cool as possible. So don't wear this. So whether or not you have ever delved into the genre of jazz guitar, there are some things that will be easily applicable to your playing, no matter what style you prefer. So the first thing you want to do is turn down your tone knobs on your guitar about halfway. So here's my tone knobs all the way up. Now roll them down halfway. So nice and warm. So what you're going to do next is take your minor pentatonic scale that we all know and love and add some chromatic notes in between. So you can really add as many chromatics or as little chromatics as you want to, but as a lesson I'm going to embellish this concept. So I'm really going to include all the notes starting from B flat and coming up to this B flat. So here would be the chromatic scale. So all of those notes are technically accessible to you in your jazz stylings. So using that minor pentatonic scale as a foundation, we can add some chromatic stuff. And like I said, this is embellishing, but as you get more comfortable with inserting these chromatic notes as kind of bridges from one chord tone to the next, you'll find that it is starting to sound a little jazzy, but really the way you articulate these notes is going to make all the difference. So you don't necessarily want to land on a bad chromatic note and hang there. That's not going to work, but as a passing tone, it'll work. So as you get more comfortable with inserting these chromatic notes, like I said, you'll start to hear where they work over a chord progression and where maybe it's just not worth playing them. So I'm going to show you the next little tidbit of information to sound more jazzy, and that is playing root, third, seventh chords. So here would be a regular bar chord. We're going to take away some of these notes and just include the root, third, and the seventh. So this is a dominant 7 chord with B flat, A flat, and D. If we wanted to make this a major 7, root, third, seventh chord, then we would just move that A flat up to an A. And then of course a minor 7 chord in this format would be A flat, D flat. The B as the root. Sorry, the B flat as the root. So minor, dominant 7, major 7. So for the purposes of this lesson, we're only going to use dominant 7 and minor 7. And I'm going to show you a little chord progression that is kind of like a jazz blues fusion. So normally, if you were playing this with bar chords, it would sound something like this. That doesn't sound very jazzy, does it? Now let me play those same chords only using our root, third, seventh. So this is going to be all dominant 7, root, third, seventh chords. That's definitely moving into the jazz realm. Now, if you want to get a little bit more advanced, a really neat thing to do as you're going through this is just a regular 1-4-5 blues progression. But what you can do is displace the root note over the 4 chord and include the B flat in the bass. So normally the 4 chord would be an E flat 7. But instead, we're going to take half of the bar where it's on that 4 chord and change that E flat to a B flat. So here's what that sounds like. So it already is getting even more jazzier because there's a little bit more color happening there, and it is adding some tension before it returns back to that one chord. So here's those first two chords, and then I'll return back to the one chord, and you can hear what that sounds like. So it's got that resolution. It's really cool, really hip. It's a jazz term, isn't it? So the next piece of information that I can show you regarding this chord progression, and another really cool thing that you can do to get kind of that outside jazzy sound, is to include the flat 2 in place of where you would normally just be hanging on the 1 chord. So I'm going to use, again, a dominant 7 shape for the flat 2, which would be B. So let me put all that together for you. Here's 1, 4, flat 2, and then we're back to the 4. So that is much more jazzy, a lot more going on than just I actually haven't even gotten to the 5 chord yet. So that's where I'm going to make even more interesting sounds using the diatonic chords from this B flat major scale. So what I'll do is just go right up the scale from 1, 2, 3. So that, again, these voicings are really lending themselves to that jazzy tonality. So to get from 1 to 4 to 5, I'm going to insert between the turnaround, I'm going to insert this, the 2 and the 3. So what is going to happen then, this is what it'll sound like. So a lot was going on there. It was just a kind of like a 2-5-1 progression going chromatically. So like I mentioned, those chromatic notes are really interesting to throw in as long as you've established that this is home. So all I really did was go. And then, of course, I changed all those single notes into dominant chords. Now, if you aren't very interested in using that form, you can just skip to the 5 chord instead of going through that pattern, which would sound something like this. So no right or wrong way to play a 1-4-5, but if you want to make it very, very jazzy, then include a lot of chromaticism and a lot of dominant 7th chords. This is really like a jazz blues, but I really like jazz blues because I'm a blues player by origin. I learned on the blues, but I think it's fun to spice up the regular blues progressions that we're used to. So again, I'll play that and then I'll show you another neat trick to sound more jazzy. So here is the progression. So another great jazz technique is the use of octaves, and this is really dependent on keeping those tone knobs rolled back, because you can get this cool kind of West Montgomery Joe Pass element. And of course it depends on what chord you're playing over, so if it was something like this, and you can use these octaves on any string set. Really, it's just a replacement for if you have a single string melody. It's just that silky clean sound of jazz. So with all those things thrown together, you can really change your guitar playing from a more bluesy sound to a jazzier sound. So I'm going to put on a little jam of that chord progression that I was playing and try and put these elements into action so you can see a demonstrated approach of how I like to use these techniques. And if this is something that interests you, you know, like learning these different notes of the particular major scale and learning the chords that correspond with them, check out my guitar course. It's called Guitar Super System. I'll put a link in the description for you guys. And I also teach private one-on-one Skype lessons, which I just started doing, and it's been awesome. I've met some really cool people. So if you're interested in either of those things, check out the description of this video, and I'll see you guys next time.